All right, what's going on, everybody? My name is Clayton, and today we are taking a look a little bit at my research project that I was working on for the past few weeks, and just going to talk a little bit about it, the sources that I use, the methodology, as well as some of the findings that I found. So first off, my topic itself, I was focusing on the Ford Motor Company from 1903 when it was founded to 1930. And I picked this early era because it was the main time period where Ford kind of rises to prominence in public consciousness. And I wanted to essentially know why that was. Why was Ford successful? I didn't know much about the company itself. I had read a little bit about Henry Ford. I knew a little bit about some of the cars, but I didn't know really much about why he was super successful, apart from kind of the standard stuff that you hear in kind of general knowledge. So I wanted to explore that a little bit and know why he was successful and also why he ended up kind of going into a bit of a decline at the end of the 1920s. Why was it that General Motors, which was the primary rival to Ford at the end of the 1920s, why was it that General Motors challenged and then eventually usurped Henry Ford's claim to being the top vehicle distributor of affordable vehicles in the United States? Why did that occur? And so I wanted to explore that a little bit. Some of the sources that I used, primary sources, I used a lot of advertisements because that was kind of my focus for one of the points that I'll talk a little bit about later. And so a lot of the advertisements here are from various catalogs and kind of transcripts and things like that, promotional materials. All of these were found actually on the Ford website, the actual company website. They had what they call a heritage vault that's there that actually allows you, it's free to use for anybody, actually allows its users to go and look at all of these old advertisements. They store all of them there. And so I was able to go and look through all of those free of charge and was able to kind of devise my kind of what I was going to use based off of those. I tried to pick those advertisements that kind of fit into three different ranges. I went from the early years to the Model T in 1908 and 09, and then I had a lot of advertisements from the 1910s. And then I did advertisements from the 1920s, and I was able to look and see how they changed and also stayed the same throughout those various periods. Another two primary sources that I used were more autobiographical. I used Henry Ford's own My Life and Work and Today and Tomorrow, both of those written and published by Ford, as well as, or not published by Ford, but written by Ford, you know what I mean. And both of those are more autobiographical. My Life and Work is more of a straightforward biographical information, whereas Today and Tomorrow is more focused on his business history and or business philosophy, I should say. And so both of those were helpful. I had to also learn what to use in the paper and what to kind of fact check as well, because Ford liked to kind of mythologize a lot of his origins, and so I had to look through those very closely in some instances. A couple of the secondary sources that I used, two biographical sources that I used, were Douglas Brinkley's Wheels for the World and Stephen Watts's The People's Tycoon. Wheels for the World was more of a business history of the Ford company, and Stephen Watts is more of a straightforward biography of Ford himself. Both of those very helpful to supplement the primary source material. And then I have various secondary articles that I found in JSTOR. All of them came from JSTOR, and these secondary articles, a lot of them deal with kind of the way that the Model T vehicle actually transformed American society. So you have that kind of in the Model T in American life. You also have that in the Road to the Model T, culture, road conditions, and innovation at the dawn of the American motor age. And then you also have how some of the factories worked, like assembly line architecture and adapting the immigrant to the line, Americanization in the Ford factory. So you have a lot of these different sources here. All of them I got from JSTOR. And of course, that's not a complete list of all the sources I used. You can look at those all in the bibliography if you want to explore those a little bit closer. But my primary findings for this paper was that the success of Ford and the ultimate decline of Ford were actually one and the same, just from different periods. So Ford gets a lot of success for. I'm just going to highlight two of them because I don't have time to go into all of the details that I did. But two of the things that made Ford very successful was one, standardization, and two, the Model T. These and both were a product of the other. So standardization is helpful for Ford because he's really the first automaker to make an affordable car for Americans that also feels like a car, is also durable enough for rural work, is affordable enough, and also is adaptable enough to use on farms and things like that. And that was the Model T. The Model T was designed to be a workhorse. It was designed primarily to suit rural roads. It was not designed for luxury, which is how a lot of previous vehicles were actually designed for. They were designed for uber wealthy individuals. They were designed for the joy of simply driving. They were not really designed for working, and the Model T was actually designed for working. And so this opens obviously a new market for Ford, rural farmers, which I talked about a bit in the paper. It lowers the price drastically. And because of the standardization process of only making one type of vehicle, the Model T, and having the Model T being completely adaptable, it opens up the factories to actually start circulating a lot of these vehicles coming off of the factory line. There was tons of manufacturing, tons of Model Ts that came out of Ford's factories. And it was kind of the keystone to his success. It was also the keystone to his undoing, because by the 1920s, most people who were buying cars already had one. And so there was a bit of a difference now in what the objective of automotive manufacturers and automotive salesmen were actually going to do. It was no longer an objective to get people to actually buy a car. It was to get them to actually buy another car. And Ford's business philosophy did not help him in this area, because his whole point about the Model T was that it was durable, adaptable, and you'd never have. It was the universal car. That was actually one of the taglines. It was a universal car. In other words, you didn't need to buy another one. This was the one that was going to be. And this was great when Ford was just starting off, and Ford kind of almost had a monopoly on the automotive industry, but it ends up being a liability by the 1920s, particularly the mid-1920s, when you have other automotive manufacturers like General Motors that is actually arriving on the scene, offering a diversified product, offering affordable vehicles, but also offering affordable vehicles that were also luxury vehicles. And so you have vehicles that look nice, they are durable, they are affordable, and they also look nice. And that is a very, very big thing for the changing kind of automotive market in the 1920s. And so Ford's vehicles don't really change that much. They do adapt in certain areas mechanically, but cosmetically they don't really change that much. And that was a big factor in the 1920s. And you can actually see a lot of that in the advertisements, to where Ford starts kind of, he actually ends up buying Lincoln, which is the company that was started in 1917 to manufacture as a luxury vehicle company. Ford actually buys Lincoln in 1922 to actually start manufacturing luxury vehicles. But he doesn't stop the assembly of the Model T. He is kind of wedded to the Model T. Was kind of like his breadwinner in that sense. He was wedded to the Model T. He was not wanting to try something different. He didn't want to go into another area. He was too, I guess I would use the word timid in a way, to completely scrap the Model T. He eventually does in 1927, but by that time it honestly was a little bit too late. And focusing more on, instead of scrapping the Model T earlier and focusing more on Lincoln and more on these luxury vehicles that were coming out, he doesn't end up really challenging General Motors that was offering a more diversified product and also offering more kind of responding to customer dissatisfaction. And so, and wrapping up there, that's kind of the takeaway from the research is that the Ford success was also ultimately his undoing, which is kind of an ironic thing. Is that if you did not diversify the product, eventually your customers are going to get agitated and they're going to end up wanting something more, and they're going to wait until somebody comes along to offer them what they want, and they'll go and buy that product instead of continuing to buy yours. And that's what happened with General Motors at that time. So there's a lot, obviously, that I could say more, but I'm way over time, and it's a very interesting topic. Really enjoyed the research process, and if you want to learn more about it, take a look at the bibliography and the primary sources and the secondary sources, and maybe do a little exploration on your own. So thank you for your time.